Hey there, Great American Torch Relay participants. I am here with Dr. Robert Kempainen, who is a doctor for one, and also represented Team USA in 2 Olympic Games. And pertinent to this event, he was the winner of the 1996 US Olympic trials in the marathon. So Bob, thanks for being here with us.
Oh, great to be here. Thanks for having me.
This event is kind of following the course of the 1996 Olympic Torch Relay. So our participants are, some have finished, some are still out on the course, making their way towards Atlanta. And so I wanted to hear from you a couple things about, one, qualifying for the Olympics in Atlanta first, and then kind of your experience here in Atlanta with the Olympics. So tell us about that qualifying race.
Well, I went into that race about as well prepared as I ever went into a race. I mean, just everything was clicking. Even when you think, if you train for a longer, like a marathon, you're usually thinking about the months leading up to the race. And so, it's not all that often that everything just goes the way it's supposed to and planned. And so it did for me. And I was pretty nervous about the race. I was, when I made the Olympic team in '92, I was under everyone's radar, or most people's radar, and was coming off an injury, and my own expectations were sort of not very high. This time the expectations were a lot higher. And so I felt more pressure that way, but at the same time, I actually felt really well prepared. And so, going into that race as fit as I was, it helped out. The course, I think it was on purpose. That course in North Carolina in Charlotte was a lot like the Atlanta course. It's hilly, and so I think that played to my strengths. I've been more, even for a marathoner. I've always been more somebody who needs to rely on just grinding it out, strength and endurance, more so than having any kind of quickness at the end of the race. So
you were third in the trials for the Barcelona, I believe. And so coming into the trials for '96, was your goal just qualify, or did you think you had a good shot of winning the thing?
By far the most important thing was to qualify. I mean, you're there to get to the Olympics. And so being in the top three was by far, the priority. I would say, on the other hand, when I was in the race itself, in order to try to ensure I was in a top three spot, I was definitely grinding it out in the lead, because I was not so much focused on, can I be first instead of second? I was more just like, okay, I've got to try to bury this so nobody can come back and catch me at the end. And so it really was, even though I ended up winning the race, it was really driven by, it wasn't until within the last mile that I was like, okay, I'm going to make the team, and I could kind of enjoy the idea of finishing first, but it was really just trying, between Coogan and Brantley and Steve Placentia, I would be the odd man out if it came to a sprint. So I was pretty paranoid about anyone.
So you needed to put it away early.
Yeah, that was the idea.
Okay, awesome. So in that race, and I'm sure you get asked about this all the time, and like mile 20 or so, you ran into some like stomach issues.
Yeah, big time.
Yeah. So did that come up, and did you sort of know that you could take that in stride? Because I've never seen someone go through that and then accelerate. So was there a moment where you're like, crap, like this is, everything's gone perfect up until now, and then you sort of got to mentally regroup?
Yeah, I skipped the last water stop before I started vomiting, and just because I could sense that it seemed like whatever I'd been drinking in the first 20 miles of the race wasn't going anywhere. It just seemed like it was all in my stomach. And so, it wasn't, it certainly, when I started vomiting, it was just trying to figure out a way that I could keep running and literally not inhale the vomit or aspirate. And, you know, it's not the first time I vomited during a race. And so maybe there's some learn by doing, but for whatever reason, you know, I was able to keep breathing in between retching, and that was enough to kind of keep me afloat. I had no idea that I was picking the pace up. That was probably just tons of, like, you know, adrenaline that's running, because I was really just trying not to break my stride. And if I felt like it, I figured, having vomited before in a race, I figured once the stomach empties, I'll settle out. And if I could just hang in there for that, you know, whatever it was going to be, 100 yards or whatever, that I'd be okay. And then actually, you know, once I was done vomiting, I actually did feel much better. And so it was actually easier going once I was past that.
Yeah, awesome. So after qualifying, tell us a little bit about kind of being in Atlanta for the Olympic Games. And I think, you know, probably no one in our event can relate to representing Team USA Olympics, but tell us about what that's like. And then specifically, I think, you know, being in the Olympics in Barcelona, relative to being, you know, in Atlanta on Team USA, representing Team USA, like in the United States, kind of what was that like?
Yeah, well, you know, I have these sort of mixed feelings about my Atlanta Olympics. In part, just when going into the trials, everything went just right. Going into the Olympics, not much went right in terms of just a lot of nagging injuries, and it really wasn't until probably 6 weeks out, month out, that I was coming off the injuries enough to feel like, okay, yeah, I should race. I was kind of on the fence because I didn't want to obviously take up a slot if I wasn't going to be able to compete. But things were finally coming around right before the game. So, you know, in retrospect, you know, I don't think I was as fit as I hoped I was. I guess when I went to the starting line, it was a little bit of an unknown. I think I would have been fine if it was like a U.S. trials race, but if it's the Olympics, it's like, you know, it's a multiple levels of more difficulty to place well. So at the end of the day, it was like, I always had everyone in that race, even if you're a long shot, is like, you know, you dream about Olympic medal. And so there's 3 people that, you know, probably come away satisfied, and everyone's like, you know, oh, I wish I'd done better. For me, I guess it was, you know, I don't feel like it was as good as I was capable if I'd been healthy fully, but you know, as time goes on, you sort of step back and you can better appreciate like what an honor it is to run for your country. And, you know, to be able to do that twice, it's pretty cool. And so I don't take that for granted, and being able to do it in the United States, and, you know, just even if it wasn't like a great day on the race course, the fans were super supportive, and it's just really an honor to be there. And, so, yeah, I'm really grateful for having been able to be there in the big picture.
Yeah, that's got to be incredible. We had the trials here in Atlanta back, you know, 14 years ago in March, it seems like. But just the energy and excitement, and just seeing so many people like just into running, and just I can't imagine what being on the other side of that has got to be like. So that's awesome. Tell us a little bit about what you do now. So it's, I would say the Venn diagram of elite runners and doctors is somewhat small. So how did that, you know, how did one help the other? Do you think that your motivation to become a doctor and your motivation to be a great runner, do you think those came from the same sort of aptitudes or played off one another?
You know, I think that there's a certain discipline that goes into like just even before you would go into medical training, before medical school, just the sort of attention to academics, doing well in your coursework, that attention to detail, just day after day, doing the work. It's the same sort of mentality I think that goes into being a successful distance runner. It's a lot of discipline. And so I think that there's a pretty long track record of people who are distance runners that are pretty have an inclination towards academics or professional careers, and so I think the two go along pretty well. And so I was always like a student athlete. That was a big part of my identity growing up, and that was sort of my MO, up until I stopped racing. I was always trying to do both. You always wonder a little bit, like, if I just focused purely on running, could I have run better? For me personally, I'm skeptical, because I think I needed some other outlet, or just being 100% absorbed in running, I think I would have maybe imploded a little bit. For me, mentally, it was healthier and more productive to have a couple different irons out there at the same time. But on the other hand, for some people, that's how they achieve greatness. They are just 100% all in. And so I don't think that would have worked for me, but I kind of admire it in the people who've got it, and so, yeah, I think that they went really well together for me.
Okay. Awesome. And what's your relationship with running like now? Are you doing any running, fitness, competitive or otherwise?
Oh, well, I certainly don't compete anymore. It's I talk to my old college teammates and other people, and if you started doing this when you were a teenager, most of us are just, it's like a car that has 180,000 miles on it, and you're just happy if you're out there, and you're not trying to, you just know if you start trying to train for, bad things happen. Unfortunately, I've got this is probably the longest I've gone without running. I haven't really run since January 1st, just because of a plantar fasciitis injury that just doesn't want to go away. But my goal, and what I've been doing for decades, is really, I just get out for a half hour, 4 or 5 times a week if I can, run with the dogs, and then hook up with a buddy for a longer run on the weekend. And if I can do that, man, I'm psyched. And then put me on trails, and I'm even more happy.
Nice.
So, I still just love being out there running for the sake of running. And I think I know how much it would hurt and how slow it would be. So I'm not real tempted by racing, actually.
Yeah. Not quite ready to go back there.
So hopefully I'll heal up and can start up again soon.
Yeah, for sure. Well, Bob, I don't want to take up too much of your time. You've been so generous to talk with us, and I think our participants will be really happy to hear from you. So best of luck to you. Thanks for all you've done in the running world and all you're doing now, and thanks for taking the time.
Well, thanks for having me, Sloan. And then before I go, I just want to give a shout out to Keith Brantley and Mark Coogan. They're my teammates down in Atlanta on the marathon. These other 2 marathoners, and I knew those guys well before that, and they're just outstanding individuals, and they're both super funny, and it's just great being around those guys. So just wanted to give them the thumbs up.
All right. Well, thank you, Bob.
Okay. Take care.